Hi everyone, my name is Ethel Villafranca and I am a museologist. That is someone who studies museums. I recently completed my PhD at the University of Melbourne, where my research, created learning, explored teacher strategies of museums that school teachers can adopt in their classroom practice to help students engage with learning on a deeper level. I'm also the curator and exhibition manager of the Museum of Chinese Australian History here in Melbourne, Australia. So I have been working in libraries and museums since 1998, but whenever I speak with other gallery, library, archives, and museum or GLAM practitioners, I always learn something new or find something different from my own experiences and studies. And I find that quite exciting. So I thought, why not invite GLAM friends and colleagues from across the globe so that we can talk about the kind of work that we do and the various pathways that we've taken to get to where we are in the GLAM world. So these conversations are more about the individuals I'm chatting with, but of course, we will still talk about the institutions that they are part of. So if you're not a glamour, don't worry. This is a perfect opportunity for you to ask us any questions about galleries, libraries, museums, and archives. So drop them in the comment sections below. Don't be shy. Remember that there are no silly questions. But if you are a fellow glamour from anywhere in the world, feel free to share what's going on in your neck of the woods. We'd like to find out. And of course, you can also ask us questions. So, for today's episode 5, we are chatting with someone I've known for 26 years, Cecille Gelicame. Cecil is the director of Museo De La Salle, one of 3 museums at the De La Salle University, or DLSU, in the Philippines. A graduate of the University of the Philippines Manila's BA Philippine Arts program, she has been involved in Museo de la Salle since its inception in the year 2000, primarily as its education officer. She has also worked previously as the Outreach and Education Officer of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila. Cecil is currently the president of the Southern Luzon Association of Museums, or SLAM. I love that acronym. And was the vice chair of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, or NCCA, National Committee on Museums. As a member of NCCA's Technical Working Group for Project Busilak, Cultural Mapping for LGUs, she helped develop the framework as well as engage with local government units, or LGUs, across the country for conducting this groundbreaking initiative that assisted LGUs in undertaking their own cultural mapping activities. We will talk about that some more later. So she fairly recently completed her Master's of Arts in Teaching Social Sciences at the LSU, and her thesis centered on using object-based learning, or OBL, to develop lessons that empower history teachers in using museum objects for creating constructivist classrooms that promote active, experiential, and holistic learning. You guys should ask her about that. It's a very interesting research topic. So I am very pleased to welcome to GLAM Chat very good friend and fellow glamour, Cecile Torrevillas. Let me just add her. There we go. Hi, Cecile.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Welcome. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be part of your conversation.
I'm
And I'm sure there will be many more next after me.
we'll see about that. But I'm so glad I didn't have to twist your arm about saying yes to this. I know
Yes,
you're
of course.
busy. Let's dive in.
Sure, game.
So, can you briefly tell us about your role? What does it look like? What does your day as museum director of Museo de la Salle look like? This is pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, good that you asked pre-COVID, because if it's COVID time, anyway,
Well, we can talk about
pre-COVID,
that later.
pre-COVID, our well, my work as the museum director is generally to oversee the overall function of our museum. It's a university museum in a campus in the southern Luzon part of the Philippines. So it's actually near Manila, our capital. And this is the museum that I am managing at the moment. And it's a new building entirely, but it typically looks like a Spanish colonial building in the Philippines at that time. So we're housing collections that are mostly antique furniture collections. And you can just imagine the work requirement in maintaining such collections made of wood, especially to a country like the Philippines, where um, infestations, humidity, and all those factors are very much prevalent. And add to that, the museum is tasked by the university to be the main unit to handle all cultural endeavors mostly for our main clientele, which is the university students of our here within our area. But of course, we extend that to beyond the walls of our school. So that so on a daily activity or a regular day, that would be me going around um, checking collections or checking maintenance, checking if everything's been dusted. We're very much keen about termites and all other infestations, so we go around doing that. But most importantly, it's also a day of students going around visiting the museum, monitoring things, and developing programs for our communities. We're also open to excursions. So when there are days like that, that would be such a big, hectic day for many of us. So that's our comedor, or the dining room of the museum. Many little things there. So we had to monitor also the movement of our guests to ensure that nothing gets broken or lost.
This
So
this
that,
area is cordoned off, right? So
yes, yes.
we
You
don't.
can only view it from a hallway.
Yes, so we all the visitors only go through the walkway. Have there been, and this is a very non-museum question, I would
I
imagine.
know. Yes.
I will ask anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't have my museum hat, I have all these questions. But anyway, so have you ever conducted an activity that utilizes the cordoned off area of the museum?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, a lot. But those only for very limited number of people. That's only for
what
a very
kind of
specialized program.
activities?
Again,
What kind of activities?
we would develop special programs that we would call this all access tours. That's one. So that's only for very small, very exclusive group.
How
Usually enthusiasts or collectors, and that's a pre-scheduled kind of visit. Second, we would have specialized programs for our students, also very small group. They would
small?
very
Small.
specifically look at collections and study them like that.
How small is small? Five,
Some,
10,
a maximum of 15 for
max.
all access, yes.
Wow, that must be very exciting to have
Yes. And that's a
the
privileged
opportunity.
opportunity.
What a privilege. I remember, I'm not sure, I don't think I mentioned this in my introduction. We used, but I did mention that we've known each other for 26
Mhm.
years. And
Yeah.
we were classmates in our undergraduate degree for Philippine Arts. And I remember in some of our courses, we were able to go to collectors' houses.
Oh, yeah.
One
Yes,
of
we
the
did.
houses,
Yes.
yes, Hispanic tradition in Philippine arts. And we went to a collector's house, and this museum pieces, the chairs, um, mariposa chairs,
And the religious images there.
yes, religious images. They were not on display, they were being used. So
Of
it's
course,
such a
yes.
privilege to be able to sit down, look closely, and feel, you know,
Yeah,
imagine you were in the Hispanic during the Hispanic period, imagining
yeah.
that. Oh, okay. Anyway, going
But
back.
that's not the kind of tour we could provide for all access.
Of course.
Let me get this right. So we don't still allow sitting down on our furniture collection nor handling our collections. No, it's more like them looking closely or looking closer and having the feel of the space, more of that, but still hands off, especially for this kind of collection.
You mentioned that part of your daily work is ensuring that everything has been dusted. Is that really done daily?
Yes, yes,
Wow.
definitely. It is done daily by well, we have very committed and passionate um, museum keepers. So they've been trained on how to handle these collections, which are very fragile. And if you've been to our museum and you can attest to how dust free they are, because that's the only way and the best way that we can maintain our collection. First is to for them to be free of dust, free and to regularly check them, like that.
Are you
It's an open storage kind of thing.
yes. And that leads me to my next question, because these are all collection objects. Are they, because yours is a house or heritage site museum, right?
Hmm.
Are these objects the same as in other museums where they are cataloged, they are tagged, they are accounted for every single piece?
Yes, yes, yes. They've been accessioned. They are tagged. They're regularly inventoried. They're regularly monitored, especially on their condition. And so that's the reason why the upkeep should be very clean as well.
So how many objects are there in the collection?
Our museum has about 4,000 pieces, 4,000 plus objects in piece, not lot. So that's
Got
from
it.
big pieces up to the little pieces. So we have that, and
Individual pieces.
it's a hodgepodge of collections
Yeah.
that you can find in our museum. It's quite difficult to manage, especially in the aspect of conservation, because
Hmm.
each type of of course we know that each type of collection would have a different kind
Have
of
different needs. Yes.
treatment,
And,
yes, and
and
different needs.
that's what I'm grappling with because I now work for a history museum. Different objects have
Yeah,
different needs. So
yes,
storage for objects that are of different materials, it's a tremendous amount of work. So yeah, so it's case to case basis per object.
yes, yes. Storage is another matter for museums such as ours because we have large pieces of collections,
Mm.
like furniture of varying sizes and varying shapes and varying dimensions. And like if you are working into maybe an art museum, you have just paintings which are mostly framed and all, so that will require um, lesser amount of space for storage. But ours, it's a continuous challenge.
Do you still have works on storage? Because you mentioned that this is sort of like an open storage, but do you still have a collection storage?
Very minimal. Most are on display because for us that's the best way to uh, ensure uh, their life like that.
And you meant, so this is a recreated house, Spanish period house. My question is, I remember someone, maybe you were the one who told me this, that this is not, the scale is larger than 1:1. It was
Yes, definitely.
purposely, it was purposely built so that it is a bit larger to accommodate visitors, or what was the reason?
Our museum, is inspired by Spanish colonial period houses in the Philippines. So if any one of our um, visitors or audiences had been to the Philippines, our museum is very
Hello. I think I kind of lost you, Cecil.
hello, hello, hello. Still
Yes.
there?
Yes,
There.
I lost you for a minute, for a few seconds.
So there. So many of the our museum is like a bahay na bato. And like if you've been to vegan or our audiences have been to vegan Philippines, where a lot of bahay na batos have been are still in existence up to now. And it's one of the World Heritage Sites too that's been declared. Our museum is primarily like that, but bigger in scale. So when our museum was built, it was purposely made bigger in proportion to accommodate um, collections for displays such as what we have now. So it's not an example of an authentic uh, one bahay na bato or stone house in the country, but it's a fusion of some of the best designs and examples that we've seen. And we also cannot represent that typical bahay na bato or old house would look like our museum, or what you'll find in our museum is what you would find in old houses at that time, because it really isn't that. It just gives you that feel, but our museum is has more than what you would usually find in a typical one.
And it's primarily for educational purpose.
Definitely, that's
Mhm.
the reason why the museum was built by
Right.
the university.
So, what do you find as the most fulfilling aspect of your work as museum director, or are you also primarily the education officer of the museum? Or
Yes, I mean, you know what it's like working in Philippine museums. We do several tasks, and we are so good at multitasking because we have very limited staffing. So I do the admin work, administrative work, and still function as the museum educator at the same time. So on your question on what is um, the
most
most
fulfilling?
interesting or most fulfilling, it's this. Well, what I'm grateful that I work in a museum that is housed in a school or in a university, and we have already clientele around us. All we have to do is to initiate engagement. So what's fulfilling is when we get to um, hear good feedbacks about our museum, and when the students would want to come back, and you'd see them wanting for more about learning about their not only about the arts, but learning most importantly about heritage. So, like um, our museum's main exhibition is all about the lifestyle and furniture collection during the 19th century Philippines up to the early 1900s or American colonial period or turn of the century. But our programs have expanded into heritage programs. So we have exhibitions highlighting Cavite traditions, where the museum is located. It's the province that we are in. We have exhibitions that would highlight also Philippine heritage or Philippine practices. But at the same time, we also accommodate exhibitions that are into the arts, done usually by Filipinos. Um, so, for instance, this is our one of our hands-on training program. We call it Kamay at Baro. Kamay means hand. Baro is the shirt. So here we were talking about Philippine textiles, and then we were talking about Philippine weaving and the different patterns that we would use. And then we talked about traditional preservation of clothes and the manual labors done by especially women at that time on how to prepare or preserve clothes. So here we were teaching the students how to do starching,
Mm-hmm.
how to cook starch the traditional way, using the powdered starch with water and all, how to squeeze it out and how to apply it to the textile, and after which, how to iron using a traditional one. So we have demo collections which we we would let our students or audiences try, and then we would make them compare um, which type of iron or presser would be best to use, and always we could predict the winner. And what we wanted here was is for our students to be able to develop appreciation on the manual labor, um, preserve also traditional practices, learn why we have spray starch now and what they do, and appreciate the conveniences they have at present because it's very tedious doing it the traditional way, something like that. So that's the wisdom of creating these heritage programs for students.
You mentioned that you have a captured audience
Yes.
because you are situated in the university.
Yeah.
But so if you
But
were
this one, this photo that you're showing, it's not a captured audience. That's our extension program.
when you say extension program, what does it mean?
That's our outreach. We did that
So
in
you go
another
outside of the museum to go to other
yeah,
schools.
to other schools. Yes.
So would you in terms of your visitorship, how much of the visitors are DLSU, De La Salle students versus non De La Salle students?
In our annual or in the average, for 50% of our average students will be coming from the university. But even the university, we have not yet saturated. That's still a challenge for us because while there are certain subjects that would require their students or classes to visit the museum, there are still programs which have not required or have not
Found here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So
To them.
it's a constant challenge that we deal with every time.
So, and just to clarify, DLSU in Cavite, in Imus Cavite, has
Oh,
primary.
this is in Dasmariñas.
That's Marinas. Sorry, wrong,
Yes.
wrong city. Um, you have primary, secondary, and tertiary level students, correct?
In our university, we only have the junior, senior high, and the college, the university students. So we have no grade schoolers. The grade schoolers who would visit the museum are usually the ones doing their excursions.
What is this photo we're looking at?
This is a photo of us doing our research work for an exhibition called Al Samasa. So Al Samasa is an exhibition about bread. Masa is the bread mass. Alsa is like a yeast to rice.
Right.
So rice, yeah. But in the Philippines,
No,
alsa
so
masa is something
when
else.
the dough rises, sort of, the literal
Yeah, right.
translation,
When the dough
rising.
rises.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So
this was
that's
an exhibition. Wait, let me. So you were doing research, and is this why you have sort of become a celebrity for baking bread?
no, that's because no, that's because we have another writer friend who writes about bread. And
Jenny,
that's
Jenny.
Jenny Orillo's there. This exhibition is also inspired by Jenny, our college friend, who also writes about culinary heritage. So Jenny produced this book called Panaderia, and that's our inspiration in doing this exhibition. So
Did
we mapped Cavite bakeries. Panaderia is bakeries. So we mapped Cavite bakeries, and we mapped their most popular breads. So when we did that, we went around, took photos of old, really, really old um, panaderia or ovens,
yeah.
and we were able to discover that there's still an existing panaderia or bakery dating 1901
Wow.
there. So it's
It,
it
wait, hold on. So it still exists. Are they still using the traditional method for baking bread?
That's the catch. They stopped using the pugon or the traditional oven because of lack of wood, lack of
Ah,
firewood. But there are still few who are still which are still using the traditional ones. But the challenge, according to them, would be where to source firewood because they were very specific. on which
Hard
firewood to use.
firewood. Yes, it can't
Yeah,
just be. I
can't just be
Yeah,
anything.
because I suppose the smoke gets infused
Yes, on the breads.
on the bread. Yeah, the
Yes,
smoke or
plus
the the aroma of the wood
yeah,
gets infused.
flavors.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
like that.
so this is about bread.
Mm-hmm.
What were on exhibit? Did you exhibit actual bread or was it
We,
fully
we
photographic
it
collection?
was a photo exhibition of the bakers. The
Ah,
the um we have this lady who has her camera. She's a university clerk, and she has this very unique talent in photography. And but she's not the usual, professional. But she's joined many competitions and won. So we invited her. So this is us, the museum, tapping also the resources within our campus in producing our exhibitions. So she's working with IT
mhm.
department of our university. So we tapped her if she could be our photographer for the exhibition, and she's of course very much willing to do it. And we went around. I think we went around for like three research days, doing photos, documenting the spreads, uh, tasting them,
Wow.
trying our hands on kneading this bread, and they're not easy, especially if you were to produce a lot, and trying it out with the pugon, and all these were captured in the exhibitions.
In the
We
exhibition.
partnered here with with several other food historians in the province, like Ige Ramos, Jenny Orios, of course, and Ami Uy. And then we also had um, bread exhibition, so we were able to preserve some bread samples. We did a magic on how to make this bread tough and looking still fresh while
Mhm.
on exhibit. Just don't smell them because they smell varnish. And then when we opened the exhibit, all the bread owners or the panaderia owners were there. And practically, we had a bread reception after the when we opened the exhibition. It was a hit,
You're now making me hungry. I
of
miss
course.
pandikoko.
Pandesal and pandikoko, yes.
Ube pandesal was not yet a thing then. I think
No, no, no. It's a new thing.
not yet. But had this exhibition been during the quarantine, it would have been an even bigger hit online. I
Yes.
I could just imagine. So, and this is the whole province of Cavite. This is the baking tradition of
No,
the.
not even. We got only to map or at least to document several bakeries in the lowland Cavite. So Cavite is
Oh,
divided into lowland, midland, and then upland Cavite. So this would be mostly lowland Cavite.
so how
So we
many panaderias did you get to map?
at that this one would be around 8 only. And
Wow.
it's quite tedious to mount it, but very fulfilling at the same time. My personal this started my personal relationship with bread making.
And that's how you ended up
Exactly.
in newspapers making bread.
Yes.
This is another photo of.
So this is us doing our research also for the bread exhibition. Uh, this is the oldest panaderia doing sopas tansa. So for a while I thought, when you hear sopas, what exactly do you have in mind?
Soup.
Exactly, that's what I thought too. But in Tansa Cavite, sopas is the biscuit.
Oh,
Sopas
wow.
Tansa, it's a biscuit. So it's done exclusively in this bakery, Kaibigan Bakery. So we documented that. And uh, all manual, no
Oh, no,
machine,
no,
nothing. Uh-huh.
wow.
Even the rolling of the cookies or the biscuits were
Yeah.
done manually.
So I imagine that, having this experience to go around and see. culture, art and culture in situ was, a very um, eye-opening and
Oh
inspiring
yeah.
experience. And
Yes,
I,
yes.
because I remember when we were undergrad, it was when we started doing field work, going to provinces, seeing the embroidery. We went to Taal at some
Oh
point.
yeah, we did. We did. And danced under the moon.
Oh, yes, that's part of the thrill of going to Taal was the death-defying experience riding the bus next to the ravine. But
Yes.
that's for another discussion. But I remember that made me realize that I like this kind of work. I like being
Yeah.
able to be immersed in culture, and that made me decide that, I want to work in a museum, because when I was younger, I was also under the delusion that I wanted to become a doctor. I think most
You
kids,
are.
not that kind of doctor, but beggars can't be choosers. Like my mom will just be happy that I'm a PhD, not an MD. She'll have to live
That's
with that.
fine.
But
That's fine.
that I realized then that I wanted to work for museums. Have you always known that you wanted to work for museums?
No, I had no ambition whatsoever.
No ambition period, or no ambition about museum?
No, I was when we entered UP, we were like unsure yet on what we wanted in life. So like you, me too. I wasn't really sure what I wanted, but unlike you, I was one thing sure. I didn't like any enter into a course that would wear white. So I had any medical courses were far from my plans. So I thought I already considered courses on the arts, maybe accountancy also at that time because that was the in thing during our
Not,
time.
during our time, it was accountants. I
Computer
think
accountancy, computer science, and PT, physical therapy.
probably half of my classmates in high school wanted to be physical therapists.
Exactly, but those were expensive. And mass communication.
Oh yes,
Remember?
I
Yeah, so that
I
was one of my
enrolled in Mascom in UP Baguio.
yeah, diba? That was one of our one among our
Top.
one top list, something like that.
I guess
So
it was, you don't open the newspaper and find wanted graduates of Philippine art.
that was the frustrating thing after we graduated.
But we still
And
found
then
it. But when did you
I
decide that you want to work for museum?
I it took me about on my last on my second semester during our second year, I think. Um, for a while, I wanted to go to UP Diliman and really explore mass communication. But now looking back, I realize I'm not for mass comm. Imagine. So anyway, I think it was during the second semester of our second year when eventually I decided I had no more choice but to pursue the program. That was when we had our first major subject on indigenous Philippine arts. That, if you
Maybe I
remember, the bamboo instruments or the
know
bells, remember?
yes,
The
well,
Tiboli bells. That was my deciding moment, I think, because I was having a hard time with math and not side subjects. And then suddenly, with that subject, I got a 1.0. And so I said,
1.0,
ooh,
the highest grade
yes,
in UP.
that was the highest grade. And so I told myself, maybe I am for this. And so I never looked back after.
I think I'm not sure if you will be the same, but I wrote about this in my PhD thesis, that I realized that I'm not a traditional learner, and unfortunately in the Philippines, the primary, secondary, and to a certain degree the tertiary level, it's very teacher teacher oriented, um, teacher centered, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
we're very we're very structured. We rely a lot on,
Yeah.
but it's not the same when you're studying culture and when you have the opportunity to actually immerse yourself in the culture itself. That for me
Hmm.
made a huge difference, and that convinced me that this is what I want to do because
Yeah, right. You're right.
it doesn't compare, right? No reading text,
Hmm.
looking at, you know, photographs of, embroidery. Nothing beats the real seeing the old lady with her, really thick glasses.
Right. Yes,
Doing the
yes.
embroidery
It's a
herself.
we had fun because or it was interesting because we weren't only reading but we were also experiencing, and the
Yes,
best part of
and
learning is really experiencing the culture in itself. We were immersed. You're right.
and
So and
remember,
one.
remember that
Yeah,
this was pre-internet days. So
right, with
YouTube,
all the library cards
yes, library cards,
and the Dewey Decimal System.
and the photograph, no digital camera. So
Yes, yes, and the
it
slides and the
was
positive things.
expensive to be documenting.
Right.
what was your undergrad thesis?
My undergrad was it's very providential. If you remember, my undergrad thesis is Paskuhan sa Imus, or
Oh,
the Christmas celebration in Imus. Very, very interesting because who would have thought that I will be living in the province of Cavite and that my first engagements would be there and not even from this place. And then suddenly, uh, I'm now here. I live in Imus.
and mine was a cultural documentation of my dad's hometown, Nasugbu, Batangas.
Morong.
No, not, that was a different class. Morong was a different class. That's the Hispanic tradition. That's with Esperanza Gatbonton. For my undergrad thesis, it was a cultural. I think most of us did cultural documentation as a whole
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
aspects of the culture of a particular place, which was
Yes.
not really being done. This is 20 years ago. So cultural
Hmm.
maps and cultural documentation was not really something that
No,
even public
it was an unknown concept yet at that time.
yes. And
Hmm.
I think when I was doing my research in Nasubu, people were just looking at me oddly because why is this girl taking photos of our, our native delicacies, our, what was that? The during Holy Week, the traditions during
Hmm.
Holy Week, because I remember I did it for several months. So it spanned
Hmm.
summer,
Yeah, definitely.
January. So I kept going back. I kept talking to old families, and they would always be intrigued. Why is she asking me about these things that's just, this is not art. This is just something we do. And it was a
Hmm.
very unknown concept yet. And I think it's quite valuable now because many of these traditions that we probably documented no longer exist,
Yeah,
which
that's
brings
true.
me to Project Busilak. Tell us about that project.
Project Wazilak, it's an opportunity for someone like me who works in the heritage sector and works in a university to extend help on a national scale. It's a project embarked on by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. So that's our de facto Ministry of Culture here in the Philippines because we have no Department of Culture, but we have the commission, or we call it NCCA. So my engagement here started became when I started working as the SLAM representative to the National Committee on Museums. And then we started, the Cultural Heritage Commission wanted to embark on a cultural mapping as a response to the PRECAP, or Philippine Registry of Cultural Property, as required by the Philippine Heritage Law. So the only way for us to be able to generate the PRECAP, or the cultural property list of the country, is if we will do cultural mapping. So to us, we had to have this toolkit, or a template, or a module to assist local government units on how to identify cultural resources, and then how to document them properly, and how to use this resources for development, for education, and for many other things. So that's where the engagement came to be. So when we did the toolkit, we also of course had to do groundworks, and we also had to test it, and then we continued teaching until now. We still teach cultural mapping to many LGUs. This is very very fulfilling, really, but also very taxing and very tedious job as well. But it requires someone with what's pusilak in English? Someone with a
Immaculate white.
immaculate heart for
Yeah.
you to be able to um, do this selflessly
Mm.
and teach selflessly also, and from the grassroots to uplift people and inspire people and be part of our advocacies, because we we realize that in heritage work we need fellow advocates and you need to inspire, otherwise we will fail in the aspect of safeguarding.
And I
So
think
that's how Project Lucilla came to be.
this project is critical and groundbreaking in the fact that cultural mapping, we needed to, as you know, as a society, we needed to change the mindset about what is worth documenting, correct?
Exactly. That's what we realized when we started going around. Even the not everybody can grasp what culture really means, or what uh, belongs to culture, or what can be
What,
identified
yes, what is worth
culture. Yeah, what's worth
documenting?
documenting and what's
Yes,
worth safeguarding. So
yes,
we would teach on there are parameters, of course, especially in the level of uh, Philippine cultural properties. But the basics of how you define culture is something that um, the academics or the teachers should also be previously working on. I think this is one realization that also happened to us when we started going around. Not everybody's aware on what covers culture. What
yes,
but very basic to us who are glamours, who are working in the sector. It's instant, it's
yes.
easy, but
But but
it's not to all, apparently.
But the fact that you're working with LGUs, local government units, and you're getting buy-in from the LGU, I think is critical because then you have the support and the resources of that
Yes,
LGU, and this is not mandatory for LGUs, right? Like they have to. I saw the part of the website. They have to ask to join the project. How does that work?
it has become mandatory for them to be able to have for them to have the pre-cup or the cultural property list for each LGU. It's a requirement now, which the NCCA partnered with the DILG, or Interior Local Government Unit, or Department of Interior Local Government. So
DIL.
having the pre-cup inventory, or the cultural property inventory for LGU, will are required now for them to have the seal of good local governance, or SGLG. That's why a lot of LGUs now are requesting NCCA for a massive cultural mapping activity, simply because DILG requires it for them to have that seal.
That's great because many of the
Mm,
cultural traditions are living traditions. So, and they're part of everyday life. And I think that
yeah,
that that probably causes some of the confusion with our fellow Filipinos about what's worth documenting because you do it. You know, we have this Western concept of culture and art
yeah,
that you see on the walls, something that you
it's true.
display. But if it's something that you use in everyday life, then it's just something you do. So it's not, it's not usually seen as something important enough to be documented. Like especially even ornate, because we have utilitarian objects that are quite ornate, so beautiful. You have a, you have the coconut when you grate the
Coconut.
coconut.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called in English. Maybe they don't
Later.
coconut grater. It can be so elaborate, but it's
Yes.
just something you use to grate the coconut. So why would you be interested in that? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very valuable project that you guys are embarking on. And let me
Yeah.
just shout out to some of the friends we have watching. We have friends from UP Manila Phil Arts, from Miss
Hello
Bonilla.
there. Hi,
Hi,
ma'am.
Miss Bonilla, who is
Hello,
a
ma'am.
faculty member of Philippine Arts. And we have fellow glamour, also an alum of UP Manila Philippine Arts, Carol.
Hello,
Hi.
Carol.
We have someone watching us all the way from New York.
Oh,
Look at that.
hi.
New York. What time is it in New York? It's probably 2 a.m. Wow. Amazing. You're still
Oh,
awake.
she will be interested in in our museum probably.
There you
I mean,
go.
because of design. Yeah.
There you go. Get in touch.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you.
And then we have some people from Santa Rosa. Hello.
Oh,
We
hi, Miss Luty. These are
and
slammers.
also from Dasmariñas. These are fellow slammers. Yay.
Yes.
Supporting their president. Go, yay, president.
Thank
We
you.
have someone from Malolos in Bulacan. And one last one, Karina from New Zealand. There you go.
Hello.
See, we're multinational here. Next question. I wanted to ask about. Okay, we've talked about how life is. How before
Wait, let
COVID.
me add. Can I add something first on
Of
the
course.
cultural mapping? When we teach culture mapping, what we also realize is that the first thing that we would ask is, anong culture nyo? Anong meron dito that's worth mapping or that's worth documenting? Or in English, what do you have in here that's worth documenting or what's worth protecting or safeguarding? That's what we would ask them. And the first thing that usually they would say would be the tangible, immovable heritage, old churches, old houses, old
Anything old?
anything old or anything that are
Physically
obviously very
tangible.
physically magnificent like that. And then we would ask, what else do you have? Food. Sabi niya, wala naman po eh. How about suman? Suman is rice cake, right? And most of anywhere you go in the Philippines, you would have rice cakes. So you would ask us, how about suman? And then they would say, yung suman naman po namin, ano lang din, wala lang. Or nothing, it's nothing, it's
It's
nothing to be
not
proud of.
important.
It's not important.
It's not
So,
significant.
not significant, exactly. And then there's this one province that I went that I assisted. I'm talking about Suman. So they were saying, nothing, wala naman, nothing special about our Suman. Okay, really? Then let's see. And then I show them how to map it or how to document it. And then they realize that their Suman is special in itself because the only one who produces it is an old lady. And she's the last Suman producer of the town. Imagine that. And she sells suman only on Thursdays during market days, no other days. And she wraps her suman neatly and nicely. Imagine that. And then they said nothing. And now, what happens? This suman from this province is now on a national level. They,
Wow.
they're
What
promoting
province?
this very specific suman.
What
Suman,
province is this?
this is Cuartero in Capiz.
Ooh,
Cuartero,
Capiz. My mom's
Capiz.
from Capiz.
It's very interesting. So how can you not that when we go teach cultural mapping, we teach people how to find their cultural lenses, because you only need that for you to be able to uh, look at things differently, look at daily things which you take for granted every day, and look at them with an eyes of culture. Like, what is it that you would like to pass on to your grandchildren and great grandchildren? That is what's worth preserving. So
I
that
love
basic.
that. I love that. The discovery of the last human maker in Quartero copies. That's
Yes.
amazing. I'll have to tell
They,
my
they,
mom about that.
they started teaching younger kids about it. It has become part of the education module.
And because of the realization that this is worth preserving, they found out that it will probably not live on past that single
Exactly.
lady. They
Exactly.
mobilized to make sure that the younger generations know about it. That's an amazing story. Thank you for
Exactly.
sharing that. Now,
Exactly.
talk about a
Okay,
little bit
next.
more serious question. How has life changed in the Town Museum about after COVID? Tell us first. So you're in Cavite in the Philippines. Are you
Mhm.
under what is it called now? MCQ, GCQ,
GCQ now, General Community Quarantine.
which means you
So,
are still allowed to go to work.
yeah, which means we're allowed to go to work on a skeletal 4 setup. Uh, we can go out, but the museums are not open still. So we're just doing generally maintenance activities, converting our activities into online, which is hard. So that's the challenge now. And generally making sure that the collections are okay despite on a lockdown. And you know what happens when there are no movements and no people around, and
Yes.
the
The
pests would
code.
take over. So that's what we're trying to avoid. That's why we are making sure that we are still regularly checking the museums and their collection.
And pests and dust accumulate.
And thus, yes, yes.
Yeah. And do you have ghosts? Because I think that this would not be outside the realm of what you guys explore, because you had an exhibition on talismans and thing. So the supernatural is not beyond the realm of what you guys explore. Do you have a resident ghost? It's an old house with old
Uh, it's
objects.
not an old house, it's a new building, but we have old objects. That I guess I think it's a common thing or a common perception that most museums have ghosts, right? And this perception stems from most museums having in their collection old objects, and the thinking of old objects having some spirits or elements attached to them, like that. So in our museum, the answer is,
What?
and maybe yes or no, I don't know really. I cannot say yes because I haven't really experienced them.
Okay.
But yes, because some said yes. So I can say no because
You haven't
I'm
experienced.
fortunate. I am fortunate that I have not
Okay, if
experienced
the ghost
any.
of Museo La Salle is listening, please let your presence be known.
No, I'm
Because
fine, thank you. So I guess most museums would have the same kind of perception, especially those having really old collections. And we know many stories that are into this that would
maybe
have the
that's
same.
maybe that's the next
Maybe that's
the,
your next topic.
no, your next exhibition topic, ghost stories, situated ghost stories. You know how ghosts are sometimes no, they're situated geographically, like there are specific places that have known resident ghosts. Maybe that's the next topic after bread. Now you can go and go. You've already done it, something.
You there are certain uncomfortable topics or uncomfortable exhibitions, right?
Yeah.
So like we have to be sensitive on how to balance it. Will it be good for the image of our museum? Will it be good for us? Uh, what does it have for us? Like when we did the anting exhibition,
Hmm.
it's a different kind of exhibition. It's so powerful that we could even feel the powers of the talismans themselves.
And this is tricky for you because you are a Catholic university.
Exactly, exactly. So how do you handle the narratives, right? So which would you highlight? Will it conflict with the thrust of a Catholic university? So how do you look at these talismans as art objects or as heritage objects? How about the aspect of
Of
spirituality and
religion.
religiosity that goes with it? So those are the sensitive things that we have to consider when in doing narratives or exhibitions.
We didn't get to talk about your thesis, which I really wanted to talk about.
Never mind, you know it.
But people would be interested in it. I imagine I am interested because that's another thing we have in common. Our research, our academic research have been focused on practices in museum and how it can be adopted to formal education, to classroom teaching. And I really find your thesis fascinating in the fact that you centered on OBL, object-based learning, and the fact that it's museum objects that can be used in classroom teaching, which you highlighted in your thesis as not something that schools and museums in the Philippines have been doing. Have you
Mm-hmm.
have you had so when you were doing the thesis, you worked closely with um, teachers in
Yeah.
LaSalle? Are these
Uh,
university teachers?
University teachers. Well, one first is I would always consult you, right? So you're partly one of my inspirations in doing that. So thank you very much. And I duly acknowledge Ethel for her inspiration and assistance in many ways and guidance too at the same time. Uh, the thesis is about object-based learning using our collections for Philippine history classes in the college level. Um, the interesting part about it, because I was told to test it
Mm-hmm.
after, as part of the discussion, I was told to test one module. So when I did the thesis, I was able to produce four modules using four museum objects. But the key to developing the module would be the understanding of your collection really.
Yes.
So the idea of my thesis was to identify collections which can be engaged upon. So there's this aspect of it being in a stable condition, the probability or possibility of students interacting with it without compromising its condition,
Mm-hmm.
access. So of the 4,000, it's been trimmed down to several pieces. I think about 300 or 200 of that. And then I had to find the historical elements for,
Mm-hmm.
for those. So the first level would be, are these good for handling? Can this be engaged upon? Are they accessible? Okay, that list first. And the next list would be these objects, do they have historical value in for Philippine history? And then trim down again the list. And then after that, I had to choose the four. So that was the process I had to do. I had to do. And then of when I identified the four, um, I had to produce the modules. And then it was a personal initiative on me to develop the modules without really consulting the teachers yet or the faculty. But my engagement to them was limited to them giving me the syllabi for
So
the
align the
programs.
module with what they are
Yeah,
teaching.
what they are teaching. And then I had to study the syllabi too, or syllabus, because it's only up for Philippine history in the college level. So I studied the syllabus and identified at which part of the syllabus can the museum program be accommodated, or at least the module that I designed. Or for me to be able to design a specific module for one aspect in the syllabus. So that was the challenge. And so when I finally developed the module, I had it checked again by the same
Mm-hmm.
teachers if I mean for comments. And of course, those were also recorded and all that. And after this, part of the discussion was for me to test one
Mm-hmm.
and get feedbacks also after. So that was the interesting part because it was like having a pre-test and post-test. So if there's no module, how would it be? And then when the module was applied, how was it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, the engagement's different when there's a module.
Yeah.
So yeah, that. So that's how the thesis came to be.
I am intrigued by, I think what's very important about doing this thesis of yours is the, awareness that it is possible to do that, be
Yeah,
working with teachers
it
and
is. It
to a
is.
certain degree, um, spreading the awareness that this is a possibility, and
Hmm.
it plants the seed for future. Probably it will not happen immediately, but the fact
Yeah,
that they know that, oh, it is possible to actually use the collection for, now you're using it in history, but I can imagine that it can be used for other disciplines as well. I think that is the biggest contribution, one of the biggest contribution of you doing that study. And I can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk more about that, but we are running out of time, and I will ask one last question. So, with the
wait,
pandemic,
wait, 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 wait.
wait,
I need to
okay,
answer first.
okay,
Because that thesis resulted to having, of course, our museum's using it, but that resulted to us having our program called Amused. So that's animation, museum, education. So my realization when on this thesis was the module was initiated by me without really consulting the teachers. But the ideal module would be initiated by the museum in consultation with the teachers and then develop the modules after and then test it and then train and develop champions. So we now have this program called Amused in our museum. So it's an acronym for Animation Museum Education. And we have partners for with not only history, we have uh, biology, we have architecture, we have math. We taught them now how to make modules which they can use for their own classes. But as you said, it's not going to happen overnight. We did this last year and we were supposed to test it this year, but
and then
the
COVID
pandemic
happened.
happened. Yeah.
And
So we're still talking about it.
let me just add, and this is, I've had discussions about it because, like I mentioned, that my research, my PhD, is about strategies from that museums employ that can be adopted in classroom teaching. And I've had multiple conversations with practitioners, museum educators who are, one of my former supervisor used to be the curator for education for a museum in the University of Melbourne, and one of our recent talks was about the fact that not only awareness, but it's not really the it's actually passing on the skill to the
Exactly. Collaboration.
yes, to the faculty members, how to create that alignment, how to make that connection between the objects itself and the
Exactly.
classes, the courses that they are teaching, so that even on their own, without the museum initiating that, hey, look at this one, they know their syllabi, they know their curriculum. They will be the one who will initiate and get in touch with the museum once they already know how to do it themselves. And I think
Yes, yes.
that's and hearing from you that it's happening, it's starting to
Hmm.
happen. I think that's
Thank
very,
you.
very exciting.
That's empowering the teachers really to lessen the workload of museum workers like us.
Ah, well, we can talk about museum workload in
Yeah.
another conversation.
That's really teacher empowerment for that we need to that we need to consider us to working
Yeah,
in
if
museums.
there are school teachers, and I've had this, I'll call it a luxury, because I had the time and I had the, the training and the resources to do so. Whenever school teachers get in touch with me, when I was still practicing in the Philippines, whenever school teachers reach out and ask that, oh, I'm bringing, and say that they're bringing their students and they are studying so and so, can they do an activity that aligns with what they're learning? And because of my experience, I am able to do that, which is not saying that other museums are not willing to do that, but I think um, it may not be something that a lot of teachers know, that they can reach out to museums. And I've heard this already in some of the seminars, the online seminars that we've been having during COVID, that museums now are very, very accommodating to school teachers,
Mm-hmm.
working with school teachers to align what they can offer as resources.
Yeah.
So it's and I think that's a silver lining for what's going on right now, the challenges that we're facing with COVID. And undoubtedly, COVID is tremendously challenging. It's going to have such huge impact in the glam industry, but we're seeing some silver linings. Can you add to what you think is the silver lining for this situation we're in right now?
Well, for one, well, I can only talk about Philippine museums. One silver lining here is this now is our chance to convert our programming into online, which we should have been considering a long, long time ago. But of course, why would you? At that time, you want
Mhm.
people to be coming to your space, your museum, and physically be there and engage. But we really have not explored the potentials of technology when it comes to museum work. So now this can be that chance. So when this pandemic is over, I'm sure this will be opening a lot of doors for museums. Even this kind of engagements, webinar thing, museum interactions with fellow museum colleagues all over the world are not something we thought of before
Yeah.
this pandemic happened. So who would have thought that it's easier now to engage using technology to discuss, to exchange ideas, to earn everything.
Yeah.
So were all unthought of before the pandemic, right? And I'm sure it will go on after.
Well, I would say that probably considered, but there was no urgent need to do so.
Exactly. Why would you, right?
Because, and this is something that most museum workers would, agree with, is that
Mm-hmm.
we always have a gazillion things to do. Everything's a priority. So, you have to just pick which ones you can do in your work hours. Otherwise, you'll never go home.
That's true. That's
All
true.
right. So it's been so, so, so lovely to speak to you this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time. But before we go, I wanted to tell our audience that we have one more episode. This time we're going back to Australia to talk to Emma Eldridge, who is from the Jewish Museum of Australia. And this is interesting for me because she is the marketing and communications manager, which I think is very critical these days. The role, it is important before, but more so now, because without the physical engagement, without visitors being able to physically go to the museum, how are you continuing to engage with them in the virtual world, or in, I don't know how. And we will talk about that. And that is our last episode so far. Haven't decided if I'm doing more of this.
Oh, you do the ghost after.
I'll do the ghost after. I'll talk to Miss Bing Bonilia because she just said there was a session
Yeah.
in Simio's Papa about it. But with that, I would like to thank you so, so, so very much, Cecil.
Thank you too. Thank you too for the
It was really
opportunity.
good to catch up with you. Say hello to my inaanak.
Of course. Thank you.
Do you want to see your inaanak plants? There you
Yan
go.
ba? Say hello. May you grow well.
They will not become medical doctors unlike Sandy, but anyway, so thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. We are in episode 5. We have one more next week. And for the meantime, stay safe, take care of each other, and be kind to others and to yourself. Bye.
Thank you. Be safe.